This episode of This Agile Life has been brought to you by BrilliantAgile.com, providing Agile and Scrum training, consultancy, and personnel.
BrilliantAgile.com. Done right, it's brilliant.
Recorded on Tuesday, December 18th, 2012, in St. Louis, Missouri, This Agile Life, Episode 9, Agile Immaturity. Welcome to This Agile Life, a podcast about what it's like to be agile in the real world. Joining me today are my co-hosts, Jason Tice. How are you doing today, Jason?
I'm doing great. It's almost the holidays.
It is.
And I might have a pick about that, too, later on.
Okay, I can't wait to hear it. And I hope it's in E minor or some musical
Oh, you're
chord.
going to pick a musical pick. Okay.
I don't know. We'll see.
We've already got me singing once. Why don't we have Tice do it, too?
I think we should all try to sing at the same time.
I'm still trying to get over from you singing.
Because
I wasn't really trying to sing.
isn't that why we do this mysterious agile thing? So we can all coordinate our activities that are all seemingly disjoint, but then they all mysteriously achieve some goodness at the end of the day.
Wait, disjoint? That doesn't sound like Agile. That sounds like a big corporate environment where they say, hey, this guy's going to go off in this room and write the back end, and this other guy's going to go write the front end. And then we're going to hook them together in 6 months, and everything's just going to work.
So that other guy talking over there is...
Because of our prescriptive guidance, right, Tice?
Oh, the prescriptive guidance has failed. Uh-oh.
That other guy talking over there is Amos King. Amos, how are you doing?
I'm doing great tonight, John. How are you doing?
Good. I'm one beer in, feeling pretty good.
Yeah, you about to start on 2. I had 1, and then I brought 2 with me.
I think we're about the same place here.
This is my second one.
But drunk Amos happens a lot quicker than drunk John. So
Yeah.
So that's how this Agile Life has gone into the happy holiday spirit, by bringing some
Adult beverages.
We're so tired of hearing holiday music that we have to get drunk in order to deal with our lives.
Where do we have a holiday music problem that I'm not aware of?
That's it. I'm going to play some holiday music on my iTunes in the background
No holiday music. We don't want to scare people away from This Agile Life.
Meanwhile, if you do Google Agile beer drinking, there's a variety of stuff that comes up. We might have to put that in our discussion queue for 2013.
That would be great. Let's look at the discussion queue for 2012 and tonight. And first up tonight is something that I think Jason is going to enjoy. It's all
and I'm
about,
going to hate.
And Amos is going to hate. It's all about measuring agile maturity. This has to be right in your wheelhouse, Jason Tice.
Well, the discussion went on because this is something that many environments or many enterprises are, let's use the term, experimenting with, where they have different agile projects, be it at the department level or maybe even within different teams in a department, and management wants to find some criteria by which they can assess who's better than the others, and they might use that for all kinds of craziness.
So the bread box or the Reader's Digest version of this is measuring agile maturity would be akin to measuring a capability maturity.
How do you tell which one's doing better without having them do the exact same product?
Let's define it first before you go off the rails with.
I'm sorry.
With this. So capability maturity model is something that most people are probably familiar with, and I think that this is trying to do a similar sort of thing where it measures a team or organization's ability to do agile.
Yes, and I think it's reflective of, call it kind of a traditional enterprise viewpoint, that you want to see some level of normalcy between how your different teams or projects function. And so what are the criteria by which you could assess that to say, this team is trending positive, this team is trending negative, this team might need more assistance, or maybe they need training, mentoring, a coach to help them become more mature. But how do you assess that? So Amos, if I went to you and I was like, and said, how can you assert, think of this as a test case, that you have stronger agile competencies than, say, John does? How would you answer that question?
Not possible.
Well, no, because that's where this breaks down. Because that's
I'm
where
just
a lot of the business guys, they're quick to lose trust in Agile, because the Agile community has never come out with a really solid list of criteria that you can answer these questions. And
that's because the criteria for Agile is people over process. Which how do you measure that?
The criteria, I argue, is working software.
Well, yeah, that too. So we both produce working software.
Yeah.
So which one of us is better? Oh, by the way, I'm working on an email application, and you're working on a stock application. So they have nothing to do with each other. How do we compare them?
Let's say we're working on the same thing, and we come up with the same thing. Let's say we come up with the exact same results, just for sake of argument. Whose agile process is better?
In the same amount of time.
Same amount of time. Whose agile process is better?
Mine, because my name starts with an A and I'm first in the alphabet.
Okay, that's one measure.
Okay, but to your point, you said measure working software. So the one we were kicking around before we got started this evening was talking about tests. So John, you're good.
No, wait a second. I'm not going to let you off the hook of telling me whose agile process is better.
Well, I'm going to say, and I'm going to throw it out there, so let's say, okay, let's go under the covers. Okay, the software is deployed. It's working. The customer loves it. It meets all their business needs. It's been out there for 6 months, and there's never been a bug. It's perfect software. So we say, wow, the people who did that must have been really good. So we then go under the covers. Okay, well, Amos, because he loves tests, he wrote tests, and he has 100% test coverage over the entire application. John, you worked by yourself, and because you're smart and you got that all straight, you said, I'm not going to write any tests at all. I'm going to write this as a spike. To the customer, the software still works and is effective. But from an agile maturity, does that matter?
Why are you even asking the question? Why are you trying to determine the goodness in agile? You have the working software.
Well, but this is where, and again, this is a big enterprise ideology, which is challenging sometimes to think about at an individual team level. So, hi, I'm the big enterprise. I'll go back into big enterprise speak.
He's doing the Yoda thing.
Yes,
again.
The big enterprise. And because I'm concerned, I want to look for trends and I want to look for normalcy. So I have this idea from these maturity models that if my enterprise is stable and sustainable, I should have common operating trends or procedures between how all of my efforts work together.
Nah.
Well, then tell me.
I don't even have to talk. I'll just let John do it tonight.
Well, then, okay, so then tell me how I can go back to my stakeholders and I could say it's okay to have Amos's team do it the Amos way and to have John's team do it the John way and to have Lee's team do it the Lee way.
Because people overprocess, and if it works for one team doesn't mean it'll work for another. That's and I've been on many teams where one team we did it one way because it worked really well for that group of people, and I went to the next team and I suggested that we try it that way, and we did, and it did not work for the next group of people. So the same thing doesn't work for the same people. I don't think that you can prescribe an agile process, which is why the manifesto didn't list a process and a set of requirements in order to be agile.
Okay, but again, this is I think something where the divide is so great. I don't know where we're going to go here, but again, I'm the big enterprise.
But let me answer your question.
Okay, sure.
How do you go back to the client and tell them?
That wasn't an answer. You just asked him another question.
I had to restate the question because
you had to restate the question because we went off on a tangent here.
Welcome to Broadcasting 101.
Answer a question with a question?
No, I'm restating the question.
Oh.
The question was, how do you present it to the customer? And the way you tell it to the customer is, you have working software. What else do you need to know? Now, you're saying from the enterprise's perspective.
So
how can they learn from that and help maybe inject, spread, evangelize to other parts of the organization how to do as well as these other projects?
Well, let me challenge you to think on
that's
your feet.
Sort of an agile transformation.
I'm the big
thing.
enterprise. Enterprise is back.
Okay, enterprise, come on.
Big enterprise is here. So, okay, I hear you, John, and that's great. And John, it's awesome what you've done, and I love it, and you've done great work. I'm going to go and I'm going to evaluate your performance. I'm going to say, spot on. That's awesome. However, I do see here, John, that you did this effort as part of a team. So you worked with other people, and over time, people change. So what assurances do I have as the big enterprise that the success you had as a function of the people that work together is sustainable in the future? Suppose
you have the same assurances if you have something written down and or some measure in place that tells you that here's your assurance. It's you might as well wipe your butt with it.
So you're telling me there is no such thing as a sustainable process,
right?
Or that a process is only sustainable by the actors who execute it.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, at least, and that is the core agile mindset, but that's where the big enterprise doesn't like to hear that language.
Well, they don't like to hear it, but it doesn't make it truth.
Well, okay.
I mean, but because I don't like people who wear green shirts doesn't make you a jerk.
Well, at least you didn't say a green shirt and a black tie, so...
People wearing ties are jerks.
Wonderful.
I like to wear ties sometimes.
Yes, we do
I really
it.
like
We
to
do
wear
a
a tie to work.
podcast after
Just so people
hours,
are like,
and I still have a
why is
tie
Amos
on.
all dressed up?
I think we should let Amos wear the tie for a while.
Really? We just take it off and put it around with his T-shirt. Okay, wonderful. We need a visual of that.
I think what he meant was we should tie Amos's hands to the headboard with a tie.
That's exactly not what I meant.
So
I thought I'd strangle you with it, actually.
So I guess if we look through the history of our country, we look at all. So think about how enterprises got to be where they are.
Wait, why don't we look at the biggest
Muckraking.
enterprise, the U.S. government?
Okay, I mean that's rather abstract, but we can do that.
They have screwed up a lot of crap over the years.
Sure.
And they've looked for things like this. And just because they looked for it and assumed that it should be there and prescribed it and said it was truth, didn't make it true, right?
Yes.
So that's the same thing with big enterprise. Big enterprise doesn't like it, but I'm sorry, you don't always like the truth.
But then, we're all here talking about Agile, and is this where literally someone needs to come back to Mr. Big Enterprise here and say that I need to, take a hypocrite pill and say that, because I'm saying, hey, I want to be Agile, I want to do this, but at the same time, I want this disciplined process that I can measure the effectiveness of, and I can ideally look for trends that demonstrate all of my Agile efforts are in control.
Well, I think old big enterprise is doing that. I think new big enterprise is also starting to try and think about their things from an Agile perspective. And you start to hear the C-level executives talking more about the big corporation being Agile. And not just Agile software development, right? They're talking about responding to changing markets, responding to market pressure, price pressure, production pressure, and being Agile from those perspectives. And so they start to take some of these playbooks and throw them out the window and say, let's be more Agile as an organization. Let's act small. And I think that's a trend.
And really act that way. Don't just say that you're going to. And yeah, I understand that they want some metrics out of that, but I don't. You can't, if you have a very large corporation with lots of different teams, I don't think that you're going to find any single thing that is like the key that makes every team better. Those teams need to figure out how to
I'll
work
support
with
that
each
because
other.
that's the whole reason why there aren't any best practices and why that's just a crock. But the thing I guess so here's the challenge. Okay, so I'll go to you, Amos, because I think you can. I mean, here's the hypothetical. Everyone else in the market that does Agile transformations, there are a lot of people in the market. They've caved in, and that's where if you do a Google search on an Agile maturity model, you get all kinds of stuff. And people have, as John mentioned at the onset, they've kind of taken CMMI and they kind of said, okay, well, how can we take the CMMI measurement criteria and apply it to the principles of the Agile Manifesto and say, hey, look, here's all the stuff we do that sets us apart from everyone else out there who's saying they can help you do Agile too. So they've caved into that. What's your strategy to overcome that from a selling standpoint or a change management standpoint to say that, okay, we've got this, we understand you've heard about this Agile maturity model that someone told you about. Well, we don't really prescribe to that, and here's why that's important to us.
Because every group works differently and works in different ways, and people are different. So the big problem is before we talked about employees as resources and we treated them like they were machines and that I have a certain amount of input, I get a certain amount of output, and it just doesn't work for people in the real world. Does it work for you in your household? I mean, when you, Tice, decided to have children, did you say, you know what, we should really sit back for 2 years and let's write up everything that this child is going to do before they're 18 so that we can make sure that they're a good member of society?
A big
yes, I would say if anybody was going to do that, it would be Tice.
We have just applied a big design up front to how to raise your kids. A BDEF. Wow. That's a good one.
But
seriously,
we
didn't do that.
Well, or did you sit down and say, you know what, in order to make sure that our kid is on the right track, here are the metrics that we can collect for this child that will work for every single one of our children in order to make sure that they're on the right track.
Now, we might have done that. Okay.
and then how we adjust their track. So because how many children do you have?
2.
Are both of your children the exact same person? Would you say that what works with one works with the other?
But you can't measure that.
Wait, no. This is what I'm. The same thing with Agile.
Well, no. I see where this is
works
going.
with one child? Does it always work with the other?
Well, it may or it may not.
I ask you a question. Yes or no?
It may or may not.
Okay, so sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it does.
In a logical, let's say no. I'll give you no.
And it's okay to say it may or may not. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. So how do I decide? And it might work with your children. Now you come work with my children, right? So the same things. And I can tell you, my kids are crazy. Does the same things work with my kids that work with yours?
No,
Probably not.
No, this is the whole best practices thing all over.
This is the same thing. I think that you can apply that same thing. It's human nature that each team has different people, different personalities, different strengths and weaknesses, and the same things are not going to work with them. So how do you come up with a prescribed? Here is how we're going to work. That is an agile maturity model and allows us to move forward with a much stronger company just because we prescribe to these practices. Because every team is like a different child, and every one of them is going to respond differently.
No, that's a very strong talking point, and you're right on in saying that.
So I need to drink more. I'm coming up with analogies like that. I'm pretty happy with myself.
The challenge here is
all your analogies have to do with children.
But take 2 steps back, okay? And this is where again a little different viewpoint. But if you are the big enterprise, or you're the person, the other one we love to use, if you're the person in charge, society has coached us to say that we want to see those commonalities and those trends, and we want to have some level of conformity.
Well,
so
do we have to have conformity, or do we have to say, hey, let's write down what works for these teams and what works for these teams and publish that so that other teams within the same company can see these suggestions, and they can try them and find out which ones work for them and which ones don't. I think that would be a better way. Is like, are you publishing what works for each team so that other teams have those ideas available to them as a pool, so they don't have to try to rethink all of those things.
No,
they can try those out and then move on.
That's a great knowledge management strategy. But then it's still, again, I'll be the big executive over here. Okay, I'm in charge.
Oh, you sound like an abusive parent.
Oh, okay. I'm in charge. How do I know my efforts are being, well, I was going to say successful, first of all, but really, where do I have issues? So real life scenario, you're an IT director. You get a budget for improvement every year on top of your operations. One of the things that's out there is, could you use Agile maturity data to decide how you spend that funding? Is that a valid use of Agile maturity data?
What kind of data, and where is this money coming from? Is it again?
I don't think it matters where the money comes from. If it's he's just saying if you get money that you can spend on improvement. So real life, how do you define that you've improved?
Well, no.
So that you can get the money again the next year.
It's twofold. Number one, you're the person in charge, and you've been given so much funding to go out and say, I have this much to spend on process improvement. I don't have enough to spend across the enterprise, so I have to make some decisions. How can I measure the effectiveness of my Agile adoption to decide where I devote that or where I direct that funding? And there was silence. Wow.
Well, okay, so the focus being software development, you want to make sure that you're using that money to somehow improve your software development, improve the software that you're producing.
So again, this goes back to, so how do big enterprises solve this problem? They say, okay, let's go do an assessment of everything I have going on and come up with a scoring matrix. And then when I see the numbers, I'll say, ooh, that one or that program has a problem.
Instead of favoring the numbers, why don't we favor the people? Why don't you just send out a thing to every team and say, hey, what do you think would help you guys out? And then if you don't have enough money to do all of it,
which I already said, so you can't take that out because this is real life, Amos.
You find a commonality between the teams. Like, what does the thing ask for the most? Give it to them. Move on. Favor the people over the process and over some stupid-ass metric that you pulled out of your ass in order to stroke your own ego about how smart you are.
Okay, but let's see if I can break that.
Sorry.
So
that escalated quickly.
So that now sounds like oh, let's all come to Kumbaya and let's do a big employee survey and let's find out what can we do and we'll find the common trends. So then we find out, okay, we need to do training on something.
Better have like 10 more beers.
What do we want to train on, Amos? So we're training on something. Well, guess what? But then all of a sudden, like, I work someplace differently, so I can't come to the training. So what we've done is we've challenged the boundary of that Agile team by taking that to the enterprise level. And I think
if you pick the training and you can't get everyone that is involved to that training, then you've decided to use your budget in a certain way. That's a management problem on your part. If everybody asks for this training and you give it to 10% of the people who asked for it because that's all you had the budget for, maybe that was a bad idea. Maybe you should spread
Amos,
out those 10%.
How then? And that's just where I think, and this is the fickle that the Agile community finds itself in, because if that's the message that goes up to the boardroom, that's where the traditional kind of status quo mindset takes over. They're like, oh, forget this. Because how do you manage it?
Why don't you change it? And it's hard when we're talking in these specifics. Like, to me is, why don't you change it and say, well, we're going to do the same thing, but instead of having all the people from here do it, we're going to take 10% of the people from this team, 10% of the people from that team, 10% of the people from that team, and then we're going to let them tell their friends, and them tell their friends, and them tell their friends.
And training is not.
And again, how does that? I mean, is that a sustainable corporate strategy?
Well, training is not an outcome.
How long does it have to be sustainable? Because people change. The people
change.
you have coming in change.
Well, that's I think where
if you have another child, he won't look like your first two.
Well, and that's where I see the motivation here, because people,
he clones them, right? They
are
all the same.
I just fork the repo and make another one. And then I hope when I push it back, my push is accepted.
You forked it already.
Wait, by the way, somebody put their genome sequence on GitHub. They had their genome sequence and they put it all on GitHub, and within a couple hours they had a pull request.
That sounds like a really interesting way to get a date.
So listen, the training is not
girl on the block.
The training is not the goal.
No, the goal is to have a sustainable Agile process, agnostic of the people involved.
But back to the training, back to the example of how do we improve, and somebody suggests we send people to training. What is the real goal? Because sending people to training is not the goal.
Oh, I know.
If somebody thinks that's the goal, then they're wrong.
Well, and it's funny. I was at a meeting today, and
big enterprise IT organization.
Yes, in a big enterprise IT organization where actually there's a requirement that some people have to go to training, and it's actually it's for an unnamed configuration management framework that we might have talked about in the last episode, and the level of enthusiasm about going to that training, let's just say, was not really...
Well, then maybe you picked the wrong training.
Well,
it's not the training's fault.
But guess
what's
what?
The outcome?
The big enterprise said, thou shalt go take this training.
Well, we're already talking about... You're talking about the Agile maturity model coming down from the big enterprise. Maybe the big enterprise screwed up in the first place, and they're still screwing up by saying, you shall go to this training.
Well... But how?
What do they want to get out of sending people to the training?
I just talked to somebody else that their company is doing
Stop acting like I'm not here, Amos, and make him answer my questions.
I didn't even hear your question.
That's because you're
I'm too
ignoring
angry at him.
Yeah, but I'm just...
Don't be angry.
So, I mean, the only thing that's coming out of this discussion is you got to hope, today's the 18th of December, you got to hope that something goes down on this Friday, because the mindset we're talking about
the Mayans?
Here... Well, yeah, the Mayan. It's the Mayan calendar thing. So it's fine. We're having a
So who cares? Hey, is this going to make it before the end of the world, Lee?
Just drink more beer.
Lee says you guys will be able to listen to this before the end of the world.
Because he's not going to have to edit this one at all.
This can be the last thing you do before the end of the world.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to listen to this like 8 times and then just
The only
let
thing
it
that
in.
I'm just concerned about is it's like we're... and I get the Agile thing, but I guess as an architect, I'm trying to think of the transition strategy to say that, I get, Amos, I totally get and I understand where you are. And I guess the people that I interact with, they are, as we were discussing, they have a much different frame of reference for how they think and how they act. And, where Agile transformations have gone wrong or been challenged in the past is you can't go from big enterprise, classical status quo IT management to bleeding edge Agile overnight. And
not easily.
Well, no, you just don't. I mean, that's a rarity.
I don't know. That's what I was talking about this other company. They hired a Scrum Master. It's done.
But that's
Whoa.
that doesn't solve the whole company.
Also, everybody at the company said they wanted iterations to be 2 weeks, and their Scrum Master went, "No, it's got to be at least a month."
And was that effective?
I don't know who the Scrum Master is. I would say his name on this podcast if I did.
We'll be nice to that unnamed Scrum Master, and it's not yours truly. But okay, but to try to move forward here somehow from the
There have to be some things because this can't all be bad. So maybe we can find some nuggets that we can use.
Well, let's do this. So we have an article that we'll put on the show notes that is kind of it's a blog post. And it hits a few notes. I mean, so, Esther Derby's commented on this, Scott Ambler, a bunch of the Agile guys have made comments. I mean, if we take like what Scott Ambler proposed, he's got these, 5 levels, from rhetorical.
Works at IBM.
Yes, but so he's got, I mean, Amos, is any of this credible? Like where we could say that we have, rhetorical use of knowledge, maybe we just pick projects where we have certified, meaning we've sent people out to get trained in certification.
I think the certifications are a waste of your time and money.
See, Amos, the problem is big enterprise has somehow over time they've become accustomed to buying.
That doesn't mean they're not wrong. It's time to change.
Well,
here's the thing,
I don't take issue. It's time to change, but
they're not always a waste of your money because, to Jason's point, sometimes organizations value those things more than actual experience, and they're like, "Well, yeah, it looks good, but you don't have the CSM,
the other thing
certified Scrum Master. If you had it, we'd hire you.
The other thing is
and that's like
I know it's wrong, but I'm saying if you want a job,
well, that's what we're talking about. Though is the Agile maturity model kind of thing and the certification stuff. Like
it's not worth anything to the individual.
This is what big companies are asking for, but why? And what is it buying them? And how can they prove that it's buying them something?
It's easy.
Well, it's easy, but it's wrong because
it's easy to do.
I could go to training. And I could get all the papers. I could get my my CSM and my whatever the latest and greatest Agile cert is. Well, I could get a Kanban cert. They're all out there now, and I can show up in an interview and I can sit down and say, "Ooh, look at my resume. Look at all these. Look at my portfolio of stuff."
Well, and back in the day,
and I could be the worst person ever who just did the work, and I don't care.
That's the problem. You could have all these certs and still be the worst person for the job, and they'll hire you anyway.
I know.
So why are we talking about the Agile maturity model? Why don't we tell companies this is stupid? You need to change.
This is stupid. You need to change.
Thank you. Yeah. We're done. Let's cut it right there. Picks.
Well, so Amos, have you ever sold before? I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, that
and my father used to own Century 21. I've done a lot of sales type stuff.
I mean, okay, so that's real estate. I don't know if that we can't apply.
No, you
can.
How
do you sell
because
that?
Selling is people.
I mean, we need to go down the hall and get a salesperson because I'd love to know how do you sell that.
We do, I think. I think we do sell. Without getting into the specifics of our business, I think we do sell that. We don't try and sell a playbook and a checklist.
Why can't we sell it with people who are different? If you sit there and ask them, ask a CEO about his children. Ask him if they're all the same. If the same thing works for every one of their children, why not use that strategy?
Well,
push it back on them and make them understand that people are different, processes are different, teams are different, and it's not always going to work. There is no magic bullet, and anybody who's trying to sell that to you is just trying to put money in their pocket.
Okay. Well, and you know what? I'll give you that and say that, maybe it's somewhat of a little bit of, call it a honeymoon factor. So, we want to do Agile. It sounds cool. You know what? You sold me talking about my kids and saying my kids are all different. That's good. But then maybe the next step, and it isn't at the selling time. So maybe I apologize for taking us down the wrong fork in the road here. But it's in the growth. So, okay, if you read anyone who's talked about how to do an Agile transformation, just like Agile, start small. Start small. Think about, kind of get your feet wet, figure out what's going on. Yeah, 18, maybe a few teams, maybe a few diverse or a few separated teams.
And they tell their friends.
And they tell your friends, yes, do the social thing.
And so on, and so on.
So then I want to grow it and I want to sustain it. And that's where I guess all your parenting analogies, they're still valid. They're still valid, Amos. I totally agree. But
pairing cellular division, let's say that. So you take that original team,
talent swinging,
and they've been talent swinging. They've been nice callback, John.
Thanks.
They've been working together, and so let's say you have a team of 10, which I think is a too big of a team personally. But for some teams, 10 is good. That's what I'm saying. Is that I hate that. Some people like it.
How about 19?
Oh, geez. So you have a team of like 10, right? And that project's coming to an end, or maybe not. Maybe it's not. And you split off maybe 4 of those guys. 2 of those guys go to start another team doing Agile, 2 to another team, and you bring 2 new people onto this team so that it can continue to grow, and you grow it organically like that. And those 2 people that are going out are also going to, when they get in with the new group, they're going to realize that not everybody's the same. I like to pair switch every hour. It works for some of the teams I'm on. Other teams I'm on, pair switching every hour, no matter how long I get them to do it. They could do it for 2, 3, 4 weeks, month and a half, 2 months. It doesn't matter. They can't get to that point. It doesn't work for them. And so we don't do it. So it's those two people are going to find that out, and then you're going to grow it organically throughout your organization. But I don't think there is a specific measurement thing that you can get that says, I'm better at Agile than you are.
But are there some things that could
Unless their name's Amos. That should be actually the measurement. If their name is Amos, they're better, or John.
Okay.
So then they're better at Agile than anybody named Tice.
So here's the goal. So
is there?
So,
but
Amos,
are there some things that you
to
could do? Are there some things that you could do to help spread Agile through the organization that maybe are repeatable factors, such as pairing, such as swapping?
So
you're
back
teams.
down to my real tactical assessment. So you suppose you have a job, and people are selling this right now. Where you go out and you say, hey, I'm the Agile expert. So I'm going to come out and I'm going to do an enterprise assessment of how effectively your organization does Agile. And I don't know what these folks do. I've just seen this offered. I mean, it's in the blog sphere.
I've done this.
So so John, you've done this. What do you do? So what are your measurement criteria that if I buy this service from you, I expect you're going to give me a nice little consultant report, and you're going to give me a presentation.
That's right.
And you're going to tell me exactly how to achieve nirvana. What do I get if I bring Mr. Sexter online to do this?
I don't know that it's going to be a Nirvana sort of thing.
Well, then I'm not going to buy it because big enterprises only want to buy Nirvana.
Okay.
No, they don't. They want to buy buzzwords. That's
and
not
centers
Nirvana.
of excellence and best practices.
Prescriptive guidance.
And prescriptive guidance.
So
I know.
And
the reality
value
is
add.
Each client is going to be different when you go in there. You're going to go in and spend some time learning about what the client's goals are and how the client is driving towards those goals.
But you have to spend that time learning because there is no magic bullet, right?
There's no magic bullet.
And so this is
not
what
every team works the same.
Otherwise, I could just hand them a blueprint and a checklist and say, do this. I don't even have to come in and assess you.
Sweet. Give me
let me ask you this.
$250,000. I'll give you a checklist.
So if you had to,
that is an amazing business model.
So here's one for you, John. So suppose that you get this gig and you're going to go out and do this enterprise Agile assessment of a big unnamed IT organization. And you get there and you start looking around and doing your learning, and you happen to find like a checklist that maybe somebody before you created that might or might not have data of whatever quality it is that the enterprise has and maybe they tried to use in the past. What would you tell leadership about that tactic?
You can't trust that data.
Because John didn't come up with it.
Well, so we're going back to the people thing. So I guess I'm just looking for how to connect from the Agile community to the boardroom, where the boardroom is really conditioned to say, hey, I want to see the plan and the roadmap and the strategy, and I want to see how I can link all of these Agile tasks to the strategy.
I think that's a pretty big assumption, actually. Like, there are a lot of big companies that I think that the C-level staff aren't really like that.
Again, a lot of these companies are trying to be more agile, so they still want to plan, right? But even General Patton said, plans are worthless, planning is invaluable, because as soon as you hit that battlefield, the whole plan goes out the window, but the activity of at least thinking about what are the things that could occur helps prepare you. Now, you just can't expect to walk out on the battlefield and say, we're going to blow these tanks up over here, these aircraft up over there, because all that stuff ain't going to happen.
So, hey, wait a minute. The Germans are on the wrong side of the field from what we planned for.
We're screwed, but keep fighting this direction, because that's what the plan says.
Because that's what the plan is.
We just got steamrolled.
It's like the scene at the end
What
of
happened?
Animal House where
We had a plan.
marching band follows the drum major wherever he goes.
So I think you have to go into each organization differently, and you can't. So data is good. If people have valid data, you should take it into consideration. But I'm not going to sit there and have you spoon feed me your metrics. Because if everything was great, hunky-dory, I wouldn't have to be here, right? So I want to hear what you have to say. I'll look at your data, but then I need to make an independent assessment of that.
Okay, so how does compliance fit in that? So if you're in a regulatory environment where you must do things this way because I know it's wrong, Amos, but someone decided to pass legislation that says thou shalt.
There aren't those things for these cases of software development.
Yeah, there are.
Wait.
No way.
Nobody passes legislation. There is no legislation out there that says the only way you can develop software is this way. You're going to write your methods being 4 lines. Okay, so I think it would be really nice if there were.
No, okay,
but there's nothing out there that is a legislation of exactly how you have to do every part of your job. You can do Agile within the confines of all that legislation.
I've done Agile within a regulatory organization where all you have to do is say, here's what we're going to do. You have to explicitly tell the regulatory organization what that is.
And it doesn't mean that you can't change it later.
And then you have to do that. And you're right. It doesn't mean you can't change it later. You just have to tell them we're changing the way we do things.
So where this breaks down is when people then say they want to scale it. Because they say, so, hi, I'm the big enterprise, or I'm the big company. I have lots and lots of little efforts.
I like when you introduce corporations like that, by the way.
What, the big enterprise?
No, when you say, hi, I'm the big enterprise.
So I'm the big enterprise here. Okay?
Do the scary voice.
He's not talking about the thing between his legs either.
Oh,
there goes the explicit tag.
How
again.
come that? Oh, I think you have done that like 4 times to me.
It looks like more like a Higgs boson particle.
It's not the big enterprise. It's a big reference model is what it is. You can refer to it.
It's an MDM.
It's a collection of related information with a specific context. Wow, that was completely off the deep end.
On.
Okay, but if you're in that, so again, I guess this gets back to like project management. So this idea of having like a project management office. So that's okay. So those are the other
John,
people.
I'm going to let you take this because I think you can handle it, and I'm going to go to the bathroom. Thank you.
Amos P.
That's
break.
right. I may be awesome, but I still have to pee too.
Why don't we have? So we really need to wire this microphone to follow Amos to the bathroom,
like Leslie Nielsen and
Naked Gun. So, but I guess what I'm looking for then is I'll give Amos that maybe the boardroom's changing. And leadership is, and they're willing to try the Agile honeymoon. Hey, let's try this Agile thing, and knowing that okay, we get it going. Then how do we scale it? There's challenges. There are some crucial conversations to have about how you understand that you can't apply traditional metrics to say that all of my Agile teams should be alike, and we really want to give them the ability to be innovative and creative. But now the PMO comes in, and the
dun dun dun.
Yeah. And they're out there, and there's lots of them, and a lot of them, just because of the job market, are learning to say, "Hey, I'm an agile Scrum Master PMO person." And I know the PMI Institute's even got a certification in that now. So they're the ones that come in and say, "Okay, here are the overarching criteria for evaluation of the effectiveness of a program." And what I've personally seen is where now we're starting to see some agile specific criteria get sprinkled into that. And is there goodness in that, or is that just all fluff like we're talking about for the boardroom over here?
It's probably a mix. There's probably some good in there, but more of that is going to, if you really start bringing in that PMO model of oversight, and if it just ends up being oversight and reporting, so you put a PMO in to provide visibility up the management chain, then that's probably value added in terms of scaling to the size of an organization, right? Because then you're taking some of the pressure off of the individual teams to report upwards.
But by scaling, is there an implication of standardization?
No, there doesn't have to be, because it should be each project should have the ability to adapt and make the changes, put their spin on things to ensure success. It wouldn't be fair if I walked in and prescribed to everyone that I don't care what you're doing or what this product is that you're delivering, because that's not really important to me. What's important to me is that I clone out 6 teams just like the one we started with and make them all work.
So
you don't have to make them work if the Agile maturity model works, right? You just they all work automatically because they're following the things that you told them to do.
So that would be these people's assumption, is that this is the only way to make this work. And most often what will happen is you may start with a foundation, right? I think we even have that model around here. We have a basic foundation. Here's how to get started. There's some things you go through, and then beyond that, the team takes over and takes control and says, okay, we got our little bootstrap process in place to get us started. Now
And for a year,
let's
they're probably
improve
going to
from
need some
there.
guidance.
You'll need some guidance. You'll need some coaching along the way.
Because it's really easy to fall back to how you used to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Until it becomes habit.
So the one I throw out there, John, and this goes back to kind of, the hypothetical assessment scenario we're talking about. So you go out there and let's say, okay, you get the work, John, but I want a report with metrics. What would you put in your report?
I wouldn't give you a report with metrics.
Then I'm not going to give you the work.
Sorry, okay. Good luck.
So, okay, then fine.
I love you, John.
I'm crafty, and you know what? I'm really desperate. I want the work. So guess what? I'm going to sign up and say, I'll do the report, and I will do some metrics. So
Okay.
Should we measure principles or practices? Because what I've seen...
You can measure whatever you want, but I'm still going to do what I think is right to make the Agile process work for the team.
So if we were to vote right now, the thumbs up, thumbs down style, you would vote... I mean, I'm pretty confident if I read the room, I think Mr. Sexter would vote no to the whole Agile maturity space and say this is just something that does not need to occur. I don't even
have to ask me.
I don't even need to do anything.
I mean, I personally think that we should measure the length of the index finger, and if it's not in the longest 90%, you need to fire that developer and hire a new one.
So I'm not actually that black and white about it, because I think that I was trying to get us to the point where we can maybe think about, are there some good things within this that we could learn from? I'm not going to completely give this the thumbs down that it's totally bad. Maybe there's some stuff in here that
so
can
you're
help
giving
us.
it a meh.
Help us learn.
Notice
yeah.
I said up or down. I'm trying to do the lean coffee thing.
I know,
here,
but it's not always black and white like that. And
the big enterprise says it should be, which maybe is a problem with the big enterprise.
I think that we're making some big assumptions about big enterprise. There are very large companies who are embracing this just fine. So where do we get that? I don't think it's big enterprise. I would say some companies.
Big command and control enterprise.
Yeah, old
school
enterprise.
Command and control. So folks who haven't, I mean, there's lots of data out there. Deloitte's got data on it about how, command and control in its traditional sense needs an overhaul because it's not given technology. Things move at a faster pace these days, and command and control organizations typically can't. Their cycle time.
Command and control assumes that the person at the top is smarter than everyone else in the organization. That's a pretty big assumption.
Does it really?
Well, you're saying that someone is in charge and someone is dictating. It might be a group.
Yeah, but I think that's evolved.
But they are dictating exactly what everyone does.
Okay,
so therefore, no one could make better innovation than them because you have to do it the way that they tell you.
But not to turn this political, but you were talking government before. So who's the command and control leader of the United States?
POTUS.
The president, the POTUS, okay? So
we try.
Well, and let's keep who the POTUS is out of it, okay? It doesn't matter. So we're asserting that the POTUS of the United States has been the smartest person in the history of the United States throughout time.
No way.
I'm with you, John. That's not true.
But that's why he's not allowed to make decisions on his own.
Well, there's an interest.
And can be overridden.
Well, there's checks and balances, although you can question how effective they are, but...
What are you driving towards?
I'm trying to see if that...
I'm not sure.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think the command and control assert... Because could we assert that the POTUS is the epicenter of a command and control structure?
Yes.
Because I think that says that model's evolved.
A little.
And maybe that's just because that's such a large enterprise that it has evolved. And I think in smaller enterprises, or smaller companies, we'll take the E word out of it, there's still that level of, the guy, he's the smart guy, but... I would use the term he's the most connected guy. The smartest, so the people that are good at command and control usually are very political, right? And they know how to get people around them that are the smartest people. Yeah. And that way when something goes wrong, they can throw them under the bus.
No. It's not about who you're going to throw under the bus.
It's about who's going to advise you.
It's about who's going
And when
to...
their advice is bad, they're under the bus.
Who you're going to lean on and go to and ask questions and say, hey, we've got this... I'm not even going to say it. But we've got... fiscal cliff.
Try to take the time out of this podcast.
But why couldn't
How do you not fall over the edge
Why
of
couldn't
it?
the command and control guy go out and say, "Hey, look, I think that you guys should just produce some good software, whichever works best for you."
Well,
maybe that is
He could do that.
their
This goes
prescriptive guidance.
Well,
yeah, I
mean,
used
the
it
one
for
that
you.
we need. Okay, so the one that I'm writing some notes on here that we need to do in the future, and they're not going to do it tonight, is that we're right back to trust. So the whole reason we have an Agile maturity model and we want all these metrics is because guess what, Amos? I'm the big enterprise, and I inherently don't trust that you support me. So I want to have ways and basically checks and balances that I can know if you're on board or not on board, and then I can react accordingly. So you're talking about, I mean, if we change the
That's
paradigm.
paralyzing.
I don't want to work for you.
That's really paralyzing.
But that's how...
You don't trust me.
That's how
The relationship is over with. If you can't trust your team, you're dead you're dead before you've started. You have to be able to have...
The best people don't want to work for you because they'll go someplace where they are trusted.
Okay, but then guess what? If there's an opportunity there and we need some people, somebody's going to show up and go into that spot, and then how do you make that work?
They won't
So,
make
Amos,
it work.
you're not going to
I don't
take
think
that
they
job.
can.
But somebody's going to show up and take that job.
I don't think
Yeah.
in the long run they can make it work.
Some-
They're going to get a scrum master
some
who
bottom-
says,
Well,
"No,
then
wait a
they-
minute,
okay,
guys.
okay.
We need to have iterations that are at least 2 months."
Some bottom feeder's going to show up.
Yeah, and
Ambulance chasers.
Well, no, and muddy the waters.
You're mixing your metaphors.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
But to close it out, so that's where some ambulance chaser shows up, muddies the waters, and this goes full circle because that's where, I tried to do Agile. I didn't have the correct people who actually understood what the principles recommended and how to apply them, and they did a bunch
that
of
sucks.
and they did a bunch of wrong things, and they give.
I tried to have sex for the first time, and it was really bad too.
And
I
they
should
give-
just stop.
And they,
So you're throwing good money after bad. You made you made some sort of mistake, and now you want to assess what happened. You're
Well,
going
I
to throw
think
more money after that.
Well, I mean, we don't have the ability to do it because we're doing audio here, but I mean, if you literally did a timeline of this, back when the Agile Manifesto was signed, back 2000-ish, this all didn't exist. And so I think that the whole AMN thing is in some ways a reaction to, I tried Agile. Something went wrong. Well,
I think the whole thing is a reaction to, how can I make money?
Well, of course, because this is a capitalistic society. But Amos, so I want to try Agile again, just like that other thing you were just talking about, but we're not going to go there. So I want to try it again, but this time I want to have some scientific criteria by which I can measure my risk over time. And then if I go into the library, I see that, there's all these wonderful methodologies that talk about scientific measurement criteria like Six Sigma and CMMI and all these other things. Let's just apply some of those to Agile. And I think that's where and it's kind of the shockwave I think we've sent out tonight is for people to say, time out. You can't take a very human factors driven process and apply all these qualitative scientific methods to it that
Sometimes you need to think with your heart.
Well, yeah,
not
and
with your
that
head.
don't take into account the human factors.
Lee's over here laughing at
what
me
it
like,
was. Why?
yeah, it
'Cause you're
was
getting
cheesy,
sappy.
but it's truth.
Sappy.
Like sometimes the logical brain doesn't find the truth. Unfortunately,
Don't you agree though that it's worth? I mean, CMMI or CMM it's about some continuous improvement and some standardization.
I'm
right?
okay with that.
There's some goodness there. There's some goodness in continuous improvement. I mean, it's a tenet of.
but also if you go through a CMMI, they don't tell you must do
I
this
understand.
practice. You must do this practice. They say, what are your practices?
So here's a closeout. Here's a way to close this out, even though it'll take a while. But okay, so Amos,
Because we're almost out of time.
it is almost the end. We're almost out of time. It is almost the end of the year. Okay, how are you going to look back next year? And let's do this at a team level. How are you going to say that you've improved and got better?
We do this, right?
Well, we do this in retrospectives, and we like dot vote and stuff.
Oh, I think we've moved on. to a new subject, but I think that is a great thing for us to talk about. How to...
Well, I mean, if you're assessing your maturity, you could take a point in time and say, okay, at this time I was this mature. And then, think about if you're in a competitive climate, you need to go in and compete for funding in a fiscally constrained climate. Hey, look, we deserve more funding because we took the funding you gave us last year and we got this much better with it.
Let's do it on a micro scale too. Let's say I'm in a competitive environment of a company of 20 people, and I don't have to compete for funding, but I have to compete for increase, a salary, or
See, I want to
position.
do this team. I prefer, okay, if you want to do this as the team thing or the person thing, go for it. But
well, I was just trying to bring it down a level.
Well, I don't think, so
it's not always, big scary enterprise.
You don't like my big scary enterprise. Jeez. Well, Amos has convinced the world tonight that the big scary enterprise is just, I'm the only person in the world that thinks there's big scary enterprises out there, but...
I'm not saying that there aren't big scary enterprises.
And there are some great big companies that get it too, which
right.
we probably don't.
That's what I'm saying is I just don't want to lump them all. I've seen enough lumping of groups of people before.
So we need to advertise to our audience that we would love to get a person in, a person in here who can tell war stories about the big successful adoption of Agile in a corporate environment where everyone from, the boardroom to the mailroom clerk are all gung-ho and have Kanban boards and are going crazy. So if anyone's working out there, look us up and let us know.
Where's that at?
I don't know. Maybe that's company I need to start.
Thrilled.
Yeah. That'd be kind of neat.
We could put
Toyota.
I don't think they did the mailroom yet, John. But back.
I don't know. Those Japanese people are a little crazy.
Wait a second now.
Okay. But let's say
don't be
they
racist.
Go balls to the walls.
So let's say we got people listening to us that say, hey, Amos, I know you've worked on like 8 projects this year. John, you've worked on a few. But let's say because of various reasons, you're not in that environment and you're working on the same project for a longer period of time.
Wait, I worked on the same project for 2 years.
I know. So this works. How do you establish a realistic baseline? And then if we roll the clock forward 1 year, how could you assert that you've improved? I
look at a commit that I did a year ago, and if I look at that code and I say, God, that is good code, then I haven't improved.
Okay, so okay. Now you get that, but let's say I'm
I would ask when the last time you looked at code was, but that's a waste of my time.
I looked at code actually. Whatever.
How about looking at what the team has done for retrospectives throughout the course of the year?
Okay, but
he wants a number metric.
Well, no,
I know he does.
Sell me on that. So say I'm this traditionally trained, PMI certified project manager. I see these retros. I
already said certifications are worthless.
I see people come together. I see them have discussions. I see that maybe they follow through, maybe they don't.
Yeah. So the team had 52 retrospectives. They established.
What was the value of those retrospectives?
I'm trying to tell you. They established 26 improvements that they were going to make throughout the year. They accomplished 13 of them, and here they are. And here's what. And
at each one, maybe they did decide on a metric they could measure in order to come out with whether it was better or not.
Okay,
but maybe they didn't.
Time out.
Maybe the metric is. I feel 1 to 5.
Isn't the important fact that they came together, had the discussion, suggested improvements, and then acted on some of those improvements?
No, because it's big enterprise. I care about numbers.
We're going in circles because that's where I'm going to say that team that you described, John, and by things we actually talked about last episode, that's a mature team. They're having retros. They're identifying improvement areas. For those improvement areas, they're actually identifying metrics about how to measure them, and then by some hook or crook, they're actually following through on at least half of the things they talked about.
But maybe
that's very,
but for some,
look at our data here. That's not the norm.
So would you say, well, if they're having 52 retros a year, they're a good team? Not necessarily. There are some teams that maybe they don't need to have retros. Maybe they communicate well enough with each other throughout their time that they make those changes without having a designated meeting.
So
does that mean that they suck?
But they're probably having retros anyway. They're just not having them at a ritualistic time.
Well, they're turning around and talking to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is way better. If you get a team that can do that, let's do it. That's another topic, I guess.
So we got to take the numbers out because go by the behavior. So what John described was this behavior where it's not just the recurrence, but it's the discussion of a real problem, identifying how to measure it, and then having the whole team approach and the buy-in to follow through. Just to be a realist, I've seen lots of teams that they say they're agile, they might have a retro, but they just talk about stuff. They don't follow through. They don't have the metric. They don't think about how to measure their success. And that's where I'd say if I had to put those two side by side, one team is, at least for their retrospective process, they're definitely more mature because they're having retrospectives that are actionable. The other team is just kind of having retrospectives to check the box. So that's where I think we go full circle and we say there is a way to measure these things, but it seems like we're just scared to write them down because then they become these things that are used for, maybe we'll just call it not well-intentioned management processes that we want to overcome.
There's too much of a human factor involved in generating software. I think, like, if I have a retrospective, if I have a team that does better work because during their retrospective they're able to just complain. That's all they do. They just get out all their complaints so they're not sitting at their desk dwelling on what the hell happened last week. Whenever they come in on Monday, they can sit down and they can focus on their work. Maybe that is mature. Maybe that's all they needed was just blow off steam during a retro. So they don't need an actionable item. They just need to complain about whatever so that they can move on and work without having baggage.
It's too bad our friend Nate Mackey couldn't have been with us tonight because I know he was instrumental in a lot of what went on in the organization with CMM, and I'm sure he would have probably had some good feedback. But I think we need to. Well,
we can ask him if he feels like I got beat up again, because I don't think so. I got beat up.
I think we need to probably wrap this one up. Amos, I wanted to let you know that I saw our friend Craig Buchek the other day.
I don't know. Can we say his name on here?
Why not?
I don't know.
Craig Buchek.
Boosh.
And he wants to come on the show in February and talk about retrospectives. Should we let him?
I think that we should let Craig come just so that we can make fun of him.
What's his nickname? What did you call him?
Boosh. Booch.
Okay.
That's his GitHub handle in case everybody wants to start stalking him now.
So maybe we have him come on in February and we can do a retrospective on this conversation this evening, since we've been all over the place.
We're overdue for a retrospective. Yeah.
Awesome. I need to call. So I used to talk to Craig like daily. His wife calls me his work wife. Yeah. And now he went to a new company, so he divorced me.
He invited me to he invited me to come and talk at the St. Louis Unix users group meeting, and I had the good fortune of doing that and then talking to him for a while.
Yeah, I like Craig. He's a good guy.
He is a good guy. So we're going to have him in.
He's semi-ginger, so that makes him an even better person.
I think he's pretty much.
He's not ginger like me.
Well, you're both soulless.
So and you guys are both. Here's what we could do for February. We'll put this out there, and I'll put this on my radar screen. Because we have a retrospective facilitator meeting every month or so, and there was one last month where I happened to mention, I used the word taxonomy, which people thought that was a taxidermy, since that's an architecture word.
I think they were just pulling your leg.
But no, I know
about stuff in
but
animals.
Going back to what John said, and we should do this.
You don't pick up on sarcasm very well.
No, but you guys maybe will just call it quits tonight, or call it quits for me tonight. So I have a retrospective maturity model whereby if you're trying to say how, if a team needs a goal to shoot for, here are some things that highly matured teams would do. So we can bring that in. We can bring Craig in, and you guys can go to town on it.
A retrospective maturity model?
It talks
Who
about...
the hell is this guy? Why do we let him sit in here with us?
It's fun.
Because there's a desire... Again.
So is doing
Amos,
your own root canal.
Yeah, but Amos,
that's fun.
But Amos, put yourself in the shoes of someone who has to manage the books.
No, we don't have time for any more shoes tonight.
We're going to talk about Christmas shoes next. But if you do that and say, okay, we're going to give teams time to go have these retrospectives at the cost of they're not doing their work. If you're the guy managing the books, you're concerned that that's going to be effective. So that's where this all comes from over here, because I guess I have that viewpoint, and then you can say I'm not well intentioned, but that's.
I'm not saying that you're not well intentioned. I think that you're not being smart about it. You're not understanding that this is a people problem. Programming is a people problem.
Well, yeah, but retrospectives are all about team process, not the code they generate.
Not necessarily about process. Sometimes they're about team building, which has nothing to do with process. It has to do with people working together.
I think that's our preview for the upcoming retrospective. We'll talk about Jason's drafted retrospective maturity model, and you guys can throw rocks at it, because I will say it's designed to say that it's designed to create the investment case or the business case to say this is why an organization should commit to supporting having recurring retrospectives of its teams if they're doing agile things.
And we're quite overdue as a podcast for having a retrospective.
And I think it's evident in what gets discussed in here. So
having a podcast about, or having a retrospective about the podcast. So actually, after the holidays, I'm probably going to invite you guys all over to the house to do a.
I think that we should have a retrospective with the mics on.
Yeah, I think we should do that
Doesn't
too.
That violate...
Didn't we talk about maybe having Matt Phillip?
Yeah, we talked about Matt Phillip, but didn't we? Doesn't that violate the very intent of having the retrospective be like what happens at the retro stays at the retro?
It's
Have you heard the things that come out of my mouth? Do I care what anybody out there thinks about me?
No.
It could be. That's an optional thing.
Well, maybe we need to see
if everyone agrees that we could be open and transparent with our retro, we could do that.
Or maybe we do it and then afterwards decide whether we release it as a podcast or not.
Then it's like...
Because I record most of my meetings.
Dude, but then it's like Homeland.
On my 2-hour drive home, I listen to those meetings again, which makes me better able to respond to the emotions of my team members as well as my customer.
And that's all fine and good until it turns into an episode of Homeland and the little memory card that you recorded on gets lost somewhere and you never know where it's going to show up. Woo!
No, after I listen to them, my phone automatically wipes them.
And don't you use Google?
No.
Oh.
Not for that.
So if you listen to this evening, I think the best thing that comes out of this, the takeaway, is that definitely Agile Maturity
has no idea what he's talking about.
It's here, okay? It's not going to go away. The bits are on the internet. But if there's one thing that the big enterprise or the small company or the successful commercial endeavor that's doing Agile could take away is to take it very carefully and saying that understand that people are what makes the Agile process effective. And there are a lot of risks that come with trying to measure those people that are very dynamic and very unique into little boxes that make them all the same thing because that's not what people are.
I don't know. I really enjoy being pigeonholed. It's like my favorite thing.
So I don't doubt that you could get an effective Agile assessment done by a skilled coach or process mentor, as Mr. Sexter talked about. But at the same time, be very mindful of an off-the-shelf cookie-cutter approach because it might not generate the intended results. And so now we're supposed to do picks, right?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was my topic, so I felt I had to come to closure.
I also tried to
nice
add
job.
I also tried to add a
wrapping it
new
up.
section, if you noticed.
I
in the
ignored it.
document.
Nice job wrapping it up.
What is that? Was that programming challenge, Amos?
Amos's programming challenge.
I actually don't think that updated in my version of the document.
You must be off the network. Okay, I'll go first because I know John wants to get out of here. So my pick
thanks.
this week, of which I only picked one because I know that's what the prescriptive guidance from Mr. Amos King says I may only have one. So it is the holidays.
I
next
did
week.
not say you could only have one.
Actually, we are in the holiday season, I say, based upon what you celebrate. You might be done or you might just be getting ready to start. So on the way to work this morning, I was saying, it'd be really funny if I had time on lunch to do a 12 days of Christmas all about Agile. And so I was driving along and singing.
His idea of fun and mine are totally different.
Yeah. And I said,
Yes,
okay. And I very quickly got to that point. I said, you know what? Not enough time to complete the project before we go to recording. So, okay. So of course you use the best thing, which is Google. And so Terry, B-U-N Bunio? Never heard of this guy before. Anyone heard of him?
No.
He's actually an Innovation Games certified mentor, but he's got a blog out there.
Oh, he's got a
Certified.
certification.
Yeah, he's a certified Innovation Games
Must
guy.
be effing brilliant.
But he did a 12 days of Agile
We should hire
Christmas,
him.
which talks about everything from
Don't offend him, maybe.
He might be brilliant.
and talks about everything from one coach to 2-week iterations, and ultimately even hits 7 stickies moving, 6 pairs programming, 3 green bars. It's funny. We tried to sing it before, and I was told if we sing it on the air, we'll have issues. So I will forego the singing, Amos.
It just will be recorded in perpetuity on the internet, and I'm not sure that's what
We're going to
necessarily want.
It would probably outdo the
Amos's
views of the Star Wars kid.
I love it. It does talk about 11 retrospectives.
Gangnam Style. It'll be
Gangnam.
bigger than Gangnam Style.
12 specifications by example, 11 retros, 10 user stories, 9 clients advising, so that's a lot of clients, 8 objects refactored, 7 stickies moving, 6 pairs programming, 5 daily stand-ups a week. What if you have 5 a day? 4 planning poker decks, 3 green bars, 2-week
do you do any
iterations,
work?
and a Kanban board with a co-located team. So this guy obviously has a co-location challenge that has awesome velocity. I thought we didn't measure velocity anymore. That could be another topic for next year.
You can measure velocity, but what are you measuring your velocity against?
Well,
that should be the topic.
We could have a time. We could talk for an hour about velocity. So
space time.
Okay, Amos, give us a pick.
I actually have a couple picks. Actually.
Oh, not allowed.
I told you could have more than 2. I said you just couldn't have like 12 because you always want to pick like 5 more than everybody else.
Well, guess what? Less is more. I had 1 this week. So.
Well, that's very good. So one is because we talked about it earlier. Actually, I'll give it to John because he said that he wanted to pick it.
I have one now.
You have one now. Okay. Resume.github.com. You go there. I wish I should have paid attention to who did it. It's kind of an interesting thing. You put your username at the end of that on GitHub, and it creates a little resume for you off of your GitHub stuff. Kind of just a neat concept. I don't find it all that useful, but it's kind of cool. And the other thing is a programming journal. So I used to keep a programming journal. Every time I sat down to program, whether I pair programming or programming by myself, I kept a little book, and I would just write observations down. Hey, this worked well. Hey, this didn't. Hey, I hated this. This was a pain. This wasn't a pain. Just different things. And then at the end of the day, I would read it, and I never went back and read it again. But it helped improve me as a developer, I think. And I brought it up at a retro and suggested that other people do it. And they called me out and said, well, why don't you do it anymore? So I started doing it again. It is great, just as good as it was before. And I think that I've already found improvements from doing that over the last couple of days. So everybody should keep a programming journal. You can usually steal paper from your office.
And guess what, Amos? I found a bug in your little website pick. Because I put my GitHub account in, and the first thing it says, I am a developer without any public repository for now. Do you have an issue with that statement?
I don't have any issue with it at all.
Because it said he's a developer? That's
yeah,
what he's trying to get at.
I wanted to say
I knew what he was trying to get at, but I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction.
I am an enterprise architect. I think there's a bug in this.
You know what, Amos? The programming journal?
No, I believe that once you say that you have no repositories, that you've given out the fact that you're an enterprise architect.
Oh, but I could put some DODAF artifacts into this, I'm pretty sure.
You totally should.
No way.
Oh, let's do that.
You have no repos on GitHub? Why do you have an account?
No, we'll take that offline.
I wanted to comment on the programming journal idea. I wonder if I like the idea. I think that there's goodness there, but I wonder if you would try intertwining those with your commit messages in Git, and then maybe running something to kind of create a stream of everyone's comments that their feelings about what they're doing and putting into Git, sort of thing.
That would be interesting.
Maybe, and create some sort of like an RSS sort of feed of
we
here's
could
the
track
pulse
your
of the
emotions
team.
Because we've determined that Agile today is just this emotional twitchy practice for folks.
Yeah, exactly.
For all of my friends that like to say I'm twitchy.
I've been quoted many times by saying they're just feelings, they'll go away. But really, they're just feelings. They're probably the most important thing that has to do with your job.
And you're a little twitchy, Jason, but I still love you.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to get my twitchy friends to listen to this Agile Life. What you got, John?
Do you have twitchy friends, too? It's not just you?
Yeah. I would love for my twitchy friends to crash this podcast one night. You know where when we do this. Show up.
Show up, you twitchers.
We need
It'll be like
imagine the council came and crashed this.
It'll be like Job's police dancers from
Hey,
Arrested
Council of Elders, come join us.
Unite!
Council of Elders.
We're summoning the Counselor of Elders.
So my pick the other day, there's like no new apps, but I thought, well, maybe
sounds like you need to write one.
Maybe I have an idea for one, and it was like it would be cool if everybody had an iDevice and could use those in a retrospective, because sometimes it's time consuming to like write down on a sticky and then put it on the board. And I thought maybe there'd be a way to create a retrospective app where people could flick things onto.
There's a bunch of things that people at conferences like that feed off of social media, like they feed off of Twitter hashtags and stuff that will like make a fountain that you can use, like, or you can have the stats like during your talk. I've used them. What are the names of them? But they're right. They're not for an iDevice. They're typically like an embedded web page that just runs somewhere. And
that would be okay too. Well, so of course it ends up there's already a retrospectives app out there, and it's called Retrospectives, and it's $2.99 on the Apple App Store.
Have you tried it?
I haven't tried it.
Oh, let's all try it.
So I wanted to put a call out there to people. If you've used the Retrospectives app, to let me know what you think about it. Not that I couldn't drop $2.99 on it, but I just wanted to get some engagement and involvement from our
Is the data secure?
listening audience.
So if I put sensitive things about our team in there, Amos can't hack in and steal them?
I couldn't.
I don't have to hack in. I wrote it. It pings my server with everything.
Oh, see, that's why we're not using it. Okay, great.
I couldn't guarantee the veracity of the security controls on it.
Then it's not good for the big enterprise.
Well, I'm sure of that.
Don't worry, Apple looked at it. It's probably perfect.
All right, guys, that's all we've got time for today. Hope you've enjoyed this episode of This Agile Life. I'd like to give a shout out to Rich Johnson for our intro music, Dan Schwabe for our outro music,
Yay!
Our audio engineer and post-production wizard, Dr. Lee McCauley.
My best friend.
AgileAtheist.com is his website. You can check him out. And thanks to my co-host, Jason. Where can folks find out a little more about you?
I'm inactive on GitHub, obviously, but
Obviously.
you could find Jason.
Hey, you should look at Taste on GitHub.
Yeah. JasonTice.com, which is, of course, also inactive. I have my priorities are all wrong. And then also on Twitter at Tice Thoughts. So it's all on This Agile Life, on the This Agile Life website.
The funny thing is, Tice thoughts are usually blank, too.
Good on.
I had a good one from a hackathon recently. We talked about where Git was a tool to make smart people feel dumb.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one.
That was
What?
Yeah, that went down in the big room, but I'm going to take that offline.
Amos, where can folks find out more about you, man?
I'm just going to go with GitHub and Twitter this time, and let's not talk about my website. On GitHub and Twitter.
Because Amos King on GitHub is an enthusiastic GitHub user.
Is that what it says? That's
Yes,
beautiful.
whereas mine said inactive.
And so my GitHub and Twitter handle are 80KRON. If you follow me on Twitter, I've been issuing some challenges for people that I'm not going to talk about because John told me I'm not allowed to. So just go out there.
Okay.
That was the extra. Oh, that was the extra thing. So I wanted to put in Amos's programming challenge, which was spend the next couple of weeks and don't allow any of your methods to return nil. Just see how it changes your software.
I don't think you could have done that.
Well, I just did it.
Well, there you go.
So yeah, just see how it changes your software and let us know. You can send stuff to me on Twitter or hit us up at thisagilelife.com.
I got the nil thing beat right now because I don't do any Ruby, so.
Well, nil,
Okay.
same thing. And
Not
an
to the-
objective,
not to the Germans.
And I don't mean like make a null object pattern. Use your brain, not your pattern book.
What is this about
And-
writing Java and wearing a tie, Amos? With someone on your... We'll take the...
All right, and I'm John Sextro. I'm the host
You guys
of
write
This
tie
Agile
where
Life.
you guys write Java where you work, right, Tice? And you're wearing a tie.
Yeah,
I believe
but
it's completely explanatory at this point.
You guys
He gets upset about it. I said wearing a tie and writing Java, and he writes Java and wears a tie. I don't really understand why he's upset.
when I can get a word in edgewise, you can find me on Twitter at JCSextro.
Say it again.
Are you architecting the universe?
And you can look me up on the interwebs at johnsextro.com. Thanks for listening, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of This Agile Life. Check out thisagilelife.com to find the show notes for this podcast. And keep living this agile life.
I love doing this with you guys.